Well, welcome to the Real Journeys of Success podcast. Yes, you're with your host today, Rob Elliott. And I have a lady who's at the moment in France. She's not originally from there. She teaches at the International School and University of Monaco. She's known as a communications guru. She teaches individuals and corporates. She's a legend around Europe and in England at the moment. Welcome to the podcast, Alicia Sedgwick.
Well, thank you so much, Rob. It's so good to be with you and to hear those dulcet Australian tones.
Yes. Thank you very much. For everyone I've been interviewing, I've been getting from all over the world, and we haven't had many English come on, but you're in France, but you're not from there. Where were you originally from?
I am from England originally. Yes. I'm actually an Essex girl. I come from a seaside town, Leigh-on-Sea in Essex, which was about 45 minutes outside of London to the southeast. And I grew up there, and then I went to university at Warwick in the middle of the country, and then came back to Leigh-on-Sea and set up my law practice there.
Wow. So before you got into law, where you grew up, is that a small town or a big town?
It's a fairly small town, actually, yes. Yeah, where I was in Leigh-on-Sea, and lovely beach, and wonderful, very, very happy times for me there, and loved being by the sea.
Did you have a big family or a small group of friends?
I had a brother, and fortunately he died when he was 18 and I was 15. So that left me as a single child with my mum and dad.
Yeah.
And lots of family and friends though, and that remains, except for my parents who sadly died too. But lots of family and friends there.
So I'm sure your students would like to hear, as a teacher at university in the International School of Monaco, what were you like as a student at school?
Oh, I think I was a very good student, Rob. I was head girl at my school, so of course, and I was a good student. Yes, I was. I was conscientious, and I was actually, what I loved was that I was able to, even at that stage in my life, communicate with everyone, so that I was with the academics, but I was also with what we called the tough nuts, who were perhaps not as studious as I was, and I could mix with all of them, and really loved that. So I was a good student.
That's truly a great art to have. You mentioned before, I mean, we've spoken about you being the communications guru, as many people call you, but you didn't start out life that way. You went to university and studied law, I was reading.
Yes, that's right. Yes. As I said, I went to Warwick University and I studied actually law and sociology. Sociology because I loved it, and law because I thought that I'd get a job at the end of my degree. And I was right, because I then went on to get my law finals and qualify as a lawyer, actually ultimately specializing in family law. But I did go on and qualify as a solicitor, which I don't think you have solicitors in Australia. You do?
Yes.
Oh, right. Because actually, yes, that's true, because I do watch Neighbours. That's my guilty pleasure. And there we go. I've confessed. And yes, Toadie, of course, is a lawyer. And I think he's a solicitor on that, actually. So, yes.
Yeah, Australian law is based on the English system. So it's all the same terminology. What led you to law, but?
Well, I think that it was because I did think that I would get a job at the end of my degree, but also I don't know if it was a conscious thing, but my brother, before he died, he was actually going to go to Oxford University to read law. And maybe subconsciously there was an element of that I wanted to continue his legacy. Maybe. So yes, I think that there was possibly an element of that. But then when I came to go to university, combining what I loved in the sociology and ultimately to be able to get work, which was very important.
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge. A lot of young people now, unfortunately, make a decision on what they're going to study based on work, not on what they love or what they really want to do. And it can backfire on you later. You've certainly made the most of it. Is that when you first got your taste of you knew how to communicate?
I guess so. I think that it was, more importantly for me, it was my chance to really help people.
Yeah.
And that's what I loved about the law, being able to help people and hold their hand, metaphorically and literally, when they were going through very traumatic times in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I loved. And I did develop the communication skills then too. But it was always within a framework of the legal system. And so always frustratingly within the law, which is an ass, and, trying to get justice, which isn't always the case. So there was a lot of frustration in that. But I did particularly enjoy helping people. I enjoyed as well the negotiation. I enjoyed as a mediator as well. And I really enjoyed that because, that was really a way of helping people to maybe avoid the legal system, going to court, and actually be able to negotiate and settle matters in a reasonable and reasonably amicable way. So certainly negotiation skills and the communication through mediation was a big thing for me. Yes, very much.
Was there any one person that was a inspiration to you as you were growing up in through university and when you became a lawyer?
I think, my parents were always inspirational for me, Rob. They were always so very motivational. They always wanted me to be happy and to do whatever I wanted to do, particularly after my brother died. They could have been extremely woe is me and bitter, and they never were. So that was always a source of inspiration for me, and really that I should make the most of life and get the most out of life, which is something that is instilled in me and continues today. So I think, no, going into law, not necessarily, no. I mean, my university friends were and continue to be an immense source of inspiration for me, and their love and friendship and support keeps me going. And I can think of one particular friend, and we used to go into the lectures and we would put on our lipstick and we'd say, that we're putting on the glossy lips. And that was the way forward. And we've retained that now, that, whenever we're going into a situation which we don't necessarily feel comfortable about, put on the glossy lips and everything's going to be okay.
Now we're going to get right into all about communication in business and leaders very shortly. But I'm sure a lot of people like to know, how did a young lady from England end up in Monaco and France?
That's true. And I'll cut short the story. I'll make it more brief. What happened was many years ago, I came on holiday to the south of France. And during that holiday, I met a couple of South African ladies who were living in the south of France. And we got on extremely well. And I used to come backwards and forwards to visit them. And in July 1996, July the 4th, American Independence Day, they introduced me to the woman who has become the love of my life, who was actually and is an American girl living in the south of France. So here we are, two South African ladies living in the south of France, introduce an English girl to an American girl who was living in the south of France. And after that, I used to come backwards and forwards to see her until I ultimately moved here about 6-7 years ago when we got married. And I really established myself here in Roquefort and Cap Martin, which is just near to Monaco, about 15 minutes drive.
So you could say you could blame it on the Beaujolais.
Don't blame it on the boogie. Blame it on the Beaujolais.
100%. Now, you are a teacher and known as the communications guru. How did you go from a lawyer? We've now got you in south of France and Monaco with 2 South African ladies and an American lady. So where did the communication guru part come in, and how did you end up teaching at the International University?
Okay, so when I met Annette and I started to come backwards and forwards to France, I wanted to do everything different to what I was doing in England. So that meant working differently and not in the law, which wasn't then that I behaved illegally or unlawfully, but I wanted to do different things. So I started an events business, actually with a New Zealand chap who was living again in the south of France. You see, we're very cosmopolitan here. And that business, events business, was absolutely Monte Carlo. And he eventually went back to New Zealand, and then I continued to work in events. So I traveled the world with Laureus World Sports Awards, managing the red carpet for them. I worked with the BBC in London, talent managing at events like Chelsea Flower Show. And I also had my own radio show and internet TV show, which was called Asking Alicia. So that was all kind of transitioning me to then developing the communications coaching and training. And I started that probably about 7 years ago when the International University of Monaco asked me to teach one class of undergrads, public speaking and presentation skills. And from there, I now teach many classes for undergrads. I've taught the MBAs and the master's students. And I also then taught at the International School of Monaco and developed my own business, which is to train corporations, to train associations and individuals in developing their communication skills. And what I found actually, Rob, was that it was almost like I was coming home, because I felt that everything that I had been working in was leading me to doing what I'm doing now, because it really fulfills everything that I love to do, which is to help people. Which is to give them confidence, which is to motivate them and help them find their voice and really boost their self-esteem. So, you know, everything that I was doing in the law, which was helping people, now I can do it in such a positive way without the restrictions of the legal system.
I do hear what you're saying there. I know that when I've watched someone that I've taught in public speaking do a keynote and they nail it, you're happier than they are, because it's like watching one of your children get up and absolutely, you know.
Oh my goodness, yes, you're so right. You know, I don't have children, but I feel like I do have children because you know, I've got thousands of students who are my children, and I nurture them and I care for them and I watch them grow, and gosh, you know, what a wonderful thing.
I think I was looking back over the last 12 months, especially now we've gone through COVID, and thinking to some of the old general managers that I've had in the past and their communication style. And I remember working for one lady. She was an awesome general manager, very good. You could take her to a customer, very good in the boardroom setting, but they put her on stage one day at one of our sales conferences. 31 ums later in 1 minute and pacing up and down.
Oh dear.
So sorry for her.
Yeah.
And I've seen it time and time again when a lot of managers believe well, this wasn't her case. She didn't believe she was a good speaker, but a lot of them believe when they're not. And it sort of rubs a bit of the shine off. If you look at leaders now, especially now post-COVID, where communication is more important than anywhere, what do you see the biggest challenges for leaders at all levels of business when it comes to being able to communicate?
Well, I do think, first of all, what I found, and I'm sure that you have too, is that, of course, everything went online.
Yes.
And so that was the first challenge, because all of these leaders and managers who were having face-to-face meetings and communicating that way were suddenly thrust into Zoom, Google Meets, Team, and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And so it was a very different dynamic. And so that's when I really came into the fore, because helping those leaders and managers to actually communicate online was essential. I did some training with Monaco Economic Board, for example, because they then had to do webinars to get their message across and to involve their members. And initially, I'm sure they won't mind me saying that it was very rough and it was very raw and it wasn't effective. And several trainings later, now they're doing radio shows, they're doing webinars, and they're really moving forward in a tremendously positive way, and that's incredible.
Yeah.
So I think that for leaders and managers, they have to accept and realize that there is now a very different form of communication. It is online, and they've got to be effective in that way, and they've got to make an impact. And they've also got to realize that their staff and their managers need to be trained.
Do you think the corporate world spends enough on training their managers at all levels on proper communication?
Well, it's interesting. I was actually listening to one of your podcasts with a gentleman who was an expert in public speaking training, and he was from Canada.
Yes.
I can't think of his name. Sorry, but he was very interesting, and he was saying, I think in your discussion that we were saying, or you were saying that. Spending money on communications training might be possible for big corporations now, but not necessarily in the hospitality industry, for example. But actually, they need to put their money in that because, they've got to get their message across. They've got to be at the forefront of people's attention so that they will go back to their hotel. They will go back to their cruise ship. They will go back to theatre and entertainment. So, it's really important that they get their message out there. And so they should be trained. Whether or not they're going to have the money to do that, I don't know. But it really would be an extremely positive investment. People forget that they spend a lot of time on branding. Yes. They spend a lot of time on what they look like and their image and their message and, their mission statement, all these kind of things. And then they put a representative of their company on camera or in person on a platform, and they open their mouth and all of that branding and all of that imaging completely goes out the door.
Yeah, we call it the sales chain.
Yes.
Where not everyone is in sales, but everyone sells.
Yes.
And it can be anyone. It can be the person delivering. It can be the person cooking. It can be the person taking the order. One weak link, and it doesn't matter how good your product is, it's blown up. It's gone.
Yes. Yes. I
Do you
love
think
that.
with the generational change, most people talk that the younger generation have an issue with listening and communicating, and they communicate in a very different way to maybe the middle generation and the older generation. How would you see a manager, say, that's 55, 60, what tip would you give them to trying to communicate with someone in their mid-20s who has a totally different outlook on life? And we've all been there, done that. When we were there, we didn't listen that well either at 25.
That's true.
How do we get through to them? How do we engage them in proper communication?
Well, I think that we have to realize that this younger generation do have a different attention span to us.
Yes.
And everything is much more quick, and they're on to the next.
True.
So it's about trying to keep their attention, but in order to do that, you really have to relate to them.
Yeah.
And so you have to communicate with them in a way that they communicate. With my younger students, for example, dealing with TikTok or other videos like that, where they can express themselves and they can get their message across in the way that they do that. So it's kind of a short burst, you get the point across, and in a way, that's how you have to communicate with them too. It's almost short bursts and then giving them something to do. I think that it's very important that you engage. That's the art of communication anyway.
Yeah.
But really engaging with them, but how they relate to whatever the task is. So it's very important, give them an opportunity to express themselves in the way that they express themselves, and then give them a task that they can focus on, and then come back to you and you share that. I think it's very, very important that there is constant sharing. That's the Latin word communicare. It is about sharing, and it's about being able to do that very openly. You've got to be very transparent with this younger generation as well. They're not going to take any crap, if I can use that word. And you really have to be, you've got to be specific, you've got to be clear, and you've got to give them the opportunity to express themselves in the way that they do. And realize that it's no fault of yours if they're not listening for very long.
So with so much changing in the world, especially with COVID now, and with a bit of luck, I know in Australia, we look like we're coming out of it, and that we're making progress around the world. Is that what inspired you to write your latest book?
My latest book, Communicating Through Change, Rob, it was in a way part of the inspiration. I've focused very much on our conversation talking about how I like to help people.
Yeah.
And I realized last year during the pandemic, and unfortunately, we haven't got the same handle on it as Australia has. Yeah. Well done to you. Not in France. England is getting better with the vaccines, but in France, they've been pretty good, but unfortunately slow with the vaccine rollout. Mm. But what happened last year was that everything went online, as I mentioned earlier. And for me, my training and coaching really went through the stratosphere in terms of people's need for my training and coaching. Yeah. And I realized I got and have always had tremendous positive feedback on any of the teaching that I do. And I realized that I do help people, and I help them in a very strong, positive way. But it made me want to help in an even deeper way and in a wider way as well. And so going back to Communicare and it being about sharing, I felt that if I wrote about my personal experience of change, different change challenges and situations. And what I've learned from them, and gave communication techniques for people to work their way through the same or similar experiences of change, that it would be a really deeper help for people, particularly in a time of great instability, insecurity, and great change. You know, the pandemic has caused so much change in our lives, and we don't even realize the consequences of that and the impact that it's going to have going forward. So my book, I think, was really timely and really essential. And so I wrote it, I started to write it actually at the end of August last year.
Right.
I had it edited and sent to a publisher, Serapis Bay Publishing, the tremendous Parole Agrol, through my literary editor and author coach, Wendy York. The book went to Parole in November. So that was 3 months, and it was published and out in the world January the 19th. So actually it took less than 5 months to get it written, published, and out into the world. Wow. And I think that that is because it is so timely, it is so relevant, and it really was needed at this time. And the fact that it became an international bestseller overnight, I think, confirmed that too. So, and again, the feedback that I'm getting of the help and support that it's giving is tremendous.
So will you write a follow-up book?
I don't know, Rob. I have been asked that. People seem to feel that there could be a follow-up book. For now, you know, I want to see what is the impact of communicating through change, and that it really does what it was meant to do, which is to really help and support people. Let's see the impact of that, and then I can review whether or not there should be a follow-up. Yeah.
So if a young person and they're just starting on their managerial or leader journey, as we call it, apart from buying your book, what would be the best bit of advice you would give to someone who's just got that first promotion, who's just starting to have a couple of people answer to them, and they're in one of those big corporations that they're really quite tiny, but they want to make a difference? What would you say?
Oh, I think that it's really important that they are true to themselves, that they listen to their gut. Yes. You know, I always think that it's important that you are authentic, that you are true to yourself, and that you do what you love. Yeah. And so what I would hope is that for any young person starting off in business, in a corporation, that they can do what they love, and that they can create what they love within that organization. Awesome. Because if they can do that, they're going to be able to really make a difference. So I think, again, they need to share their views. They need to create with their team that they can share their views too, and really discuss, communicate, express themselves, look at the different ideas that everyone in their team has, and really make their team in an environment where they feel that they can openly communicate and express themselves. Yeah. Whenever I do any teaching or training, Rob, I always do it within Team Alicia. Yes. And Team Alicia is then a space where people are free to be themselves, where they can leave their worries, leave their cares, leave their fears and anxieties outside the door. Because with me, they're not going to be judged, they're going to be supported, and they're going to be nurtured. And Team Alicia is very, very important, because people then do feel free, that they can be themselves. So I would advise anyone going into business now, going into corporations, perhaps having to lead a team, make that team their space where the team can openly express themselves and really be free to come up with the great ideas that they have.
It's beautiful advice. I remember quite a few years ago, I had one extraordinary leader. He wasn't a manager, he was a leader. And when we had our sales meetings or a meeting of everybody, his mantra was, there is no rank. When we walk into that room, there is no rank. And we embraced it and we were honest, but when you left, it was different. And then he'd invite a manager in from one of the other senior managers who they would be taken back by the frankness and the no rank. And many of them couldn't handle it. And just listen to what you've said there. It is so true. And so many businesses really should take that up, because now a lot of people are too scared to say anything.
Yes.
And that's wrong.
Yes. I mean, a life lived in fear is no life at all. And there are people who are fearful. They're fearful for their jobs now. So they're going to be very fearful to open up and communicate. But now more than ever, that's why you've got to let them open up and communicate. You've got to be able to allow them to express themselves. And the wonderful thing is that when you do that, you're going to get such wonderful ideas. I mean, there's such creativity out there. You know, I am inspired by the youngsters that I teach. I just, this weekend, actually, we did the first ever Tedx youth event in Monaco.
Yes.
And this was with the International School of Monaco. And I led them to do that. And so I've been working with mostly the students on the committee, some adults, and the assistant of secondary school, who was wonderful, and the student speakers who I trained and coached as well. And it was inspiring. I mean, these are young people aged between 11 and 17. And they took that theme of the event, mistakes that changed the world.
Yeah.
And they ran with it and they came up with ideas. And it was so interesting, so informative, so entertaining. And these are our future.
They
you know,
are.
these children, they're going to be the managers and the leaders. So looking at them, listening to them, working with them, it is inspirational and it's energizing. And that's what we need to hone in on when we get them into our corporations and our businesses and our associations.
Now, I was listening to you before, you were talking about how eclectic and how you have such a broad range of people living where you are in France, and you're going over to Monaco quite a lot. If I turned around and said to you, I've got a table booked at your favourite restaurant in Monaco, and you've only got 3 seats, who are you going to invite and why?
Oh my goodness, only 3, Rob. Oh,
only 3. I've cut it down because I know that you go for 3 quality people. You can't have a South African or an American lady that you've met before.
Okay, all right. So, well, I had a list of 6, and one of those did include my beloved Annette, because I thought actually that you were going to say that they were coming to dinner with us, and if that was the case, Annette would have made a most wonderful dinner.
Look, I take them as a given because I wouldn't go to dinner without my lovely wife. So.
So that's great. Okay, so the both of you are coming to dinner with us here in the south of France. Wonderful. I'll look forward to it. But for my dinner in Monaco, okay, I'm going to go with Barbara Streisand. I'm going to go with Goldie Hawn, and I think I'm going to go with Jane Fonda.
Really?
Yeah.
Now that would be an interesting conversation after the 3rd bottle of wine. They were awesome communicators.
Oh, awesome communicators, yes. You know that we started off this conversation by saying that it was all about the Beaujolais rather than the boogie. So I think, yes, after several bottles of Beaujolais, actually, I think a better wine, I think that conversation would be so interesting.
Yeah, I think we've all got a list of people we'd love to have. Alicia, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you from the other side of the world. You're a true inspiration to people when it comes to communication, and someone who has themselves backed themselves. It's been fantastic listening to you. I hope you do stay safe and well over in France, and you look after yourself. And before we go, where can people find your book and where can they get in touch with you?
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Rob, so much. Yes, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you today too. So my website, www.aliciasedgwick.com, and that's Sedgwick is spelled Sedgwick. So it's www.aliciasedgwick.com. And please go to me there and contact me. And get my book on Amazon, wherever you are in the world. Yes. The book is Communicating Through Change. And come join me in Team Alicia.
No worries at all. Thank you so much. And for anyone listening, I will put all that up in the show notes. So they in case they missed it or they're driving, because a lot of people listen to the podcast where they're having. You stay safe and we'll catch you soon. Have a groovy day.
Thank you.